各位同学，还有陈老师好，大家好。要感谢学校有500亿的预算，所以我们可以追求卓越有3次的国际工作营那今天真的也要感谢黄老师他organize这个很好的一个 workshop。那我们今天请到的一个国际的建筑教授，他来自罗马。那就我知道，我拜读过他很多的书籍那个建筑的教的出版都是跟数位的、跟当代的建筑有关系。我是他的同时读者，所以今天有机会看到本人，我真的蛮高兴的那今天原来是建筑所、音乐所跟音艺所的同学都参加，但是可能音艺所跟音乐所那个课程比较难调动所以老师也都来所以我非常感谢Okay, let me say a few. I'm very pleased to invite Professor Nilo to be here and to share his wonderful experience. And I know Nilo a few years ago because I read a lot of his book. It's my pleasure to meet the author in person. And also we will have a wonderful workshop. And I'd like to thank Professor Jing Hao to make this organization. And now I will give the time to Professor Jing Hao. Thank you.
Okay, I'll make this very short. 我很快的就简介一下 Professor Antonino Saggio。事实上我也是跟基义老师一样，也看过这一套书呢。我对这位教授觉得非常佩服。这一次有这机会邀请3位教授来交大。那在第2位人选当中，我跟Alepo讨论过，Alepo建议邀请 Antonino Saggio 教授过来。那我就跟他联系了，那他非常很乐意就来台湾。那事实上这是他到亚洲的第2次，他亲自到韩国，所以他亚洲经验我们已经算是非常前面的。他很喜欢这个地方。那他在基本上清大夜市他已经自己逛了也差不多了。I just told him that you already familiar with the surrounding of you.
Oh yeah,
you like the night market?
Yes.
那我想。就我个人来说，我觉得非常佩服 Professor Saggio 的，就是他在在资讯科技在建筑上的这些观点这个事情。第一个呢，他是从建筑出发，但是看看这个资讯科技这个事情到底对建筑这个事情以及扩展到整个时代到底有什么样的冲击、什么样的影响。所以在这一系列书当中，大家都会看到，其实有很多很不一样的主题。那事实上，它所涵盖的这个范围也很广。他之所以现在回到他的故乡意大利教书，在那边做的最大原因，第一个是他太太，他太太想回意大利。第2个原因就是因为他梦想出这样一系列的书，因为他认为在美国没有办法做到，因为在美国他不够熟悉于那边的整个环境。跟出版业这些人际，而且他有很大理想是希望透过这些书能够为意大利做一些事情，意大利的人，然后能够做一些更接近于数位时代建筑的这些推广。所以我个人在这方面非常非常佩服 Professor Antonino Saggio。那今天呢这个主题，对大家应该都很清楚。我们今天要讲的是什么主题？大家记不记得？记不记得？Okay, I try to like you ask them something. Okay, 基本上呢，大家都讲义都拿到，都知道今天的主题。那等一下我们就很快，我们欢迎 Professor Antonino Saggio 来点今天这个演讲。我们鼓掌欢迎 Antonino。
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really very happy to be here. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Professor Jing Hao. Thank you, Alepo, also. And we are really very happy to be here. It's a fantastic experience for me. And so we started already the workshop, and probably the people that are in the workshop will not follow the lecture because they start thinking about what happened before in order to catch up. But try to follow more or less what we are discussing because it's part of the same situation. I will give 2 lectures. One is this one, and the other one will be Saturday. This first one is focused on certain issues concerning the relationship between information technology and the changing of architecture because of information technology. And particularly, we deal with the new consideration of nature and of environment as a force that has something to do with information technology. At the beginning, you think that there are two worlds completely apart, and they are not, instead. In some way, there are fields of merging. So this is what we are discussing today. And on Saturday, the lecture will be much more complex. We'll deal in the way that we change our notion of space and our notion of time because of information technology, or in relationship with information technology. All these issues are done in order to push your actions as a designers. They are typical lectures that are intended to designers and architects. So they are not general culture lectures. They are done in order to push a process of action, of design actions. Okay? Another important thing that you have to understand is that the material, we can have the lights down a little bit because the materials that, okay, like that is perfect. Thank you very much, Director. And all the materials that you are going to see now is already on the web. This is very important because basically through the materials you can access again the pictures, you can read something, and you particularly can follow the links. So this is important that you know that. In order to access the material, you Google my name. From my name, you go to the website. And from the website, you have to know where is the hidden link. So before we saw the link of the, this one works. Is this fine for you? It works fine? Yes? Yeah, the amplifier works fine for them, yes. Okay. And, okay. 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, yes. Okay, good. So I will finish this just introduction part. And so how you access this lecture, you go on my website, and then these are the books, some books of my book series that are translated into Chinese. You probably know, you probably don't, but anyway, they are in Chinese. And the hidden link is here, is the name of my dearest friend, Luca Garofalo. There is a reason. There is always a reason. There is always a reason. Why Luca? Because Luca is related to the book series, and Luca is a friend, and Luca is being one of the 10 invited architects to this thing. There is always a reason. Nothing is by accident. Okay? So this is a way to remember that we belong to the same family, okay? And we are really working all together at different levels, okay? Different levels. And the person that are, you know, particularly following the workshop belongs to this network from the moment that we engage one with the other. So from there, we are in the lecture, okay? You think you need to summarize this? I think it is pretty much clear, right?
一开始大概就是Saggio教授就是让各位知道说你要找资讯，然后他告诉各位说现在他今天讲的东西网络上都有，他今天放上去了。然后他刚点的那一位呢，其实也是Aleppo所邀请奥体计划10位国际建筑师其中一位。那因为Aleppo邀请也是Saggio教授的朋友，也是大家是一个 family， like we are a big family.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you understand why there is the hidden link is very important, you know, because you are the person that has access to this information now. Okay, that's why it's not open. You know, the link is hidden before giving the lecture. Then after it is open. That's the thing. So this is the issues that we are discussing. Is the hybridation of natural and artificial in contemporary research in architecture. Because there is that hybridation, there is that combination, that the edges between what is built as architecture and what is outside architecture, that was a typical way of thinking of 20, 30, 50 years ago, the clear separation. Today, it doesn't exist that strong anymore. The field of environmental, nature, and architecture, they are really built to one to the other. They are merged. It's a process of hybridation. This is what we are talking about. Okay. So some issues they are put here in forms of writing, and so you can, later on if you want, you can read certain things, but basically the images and the talk will be enough. So that idea of hybridization of nature and architecture, of the environment and architecture, it started today because of information technology? Not at all. Not at all. It's been a kind of a process that was present in history of architecture in the past, and then emerged in other phases, and then was in some way cancelled, and then emerged again. Okay. So I went around to take some pictures to show these examples. This is an Etruscan tomb. Okay, we are in the domination before the Romans in Italy. The Etruscan is a population that was in Italy before the Roman, more or less 10 to 8 centuries before Christ. Okay, 8 to 10 centuries before Christ. What they were doing, they have a sensation and a feeling of architecture as something that is not separated by nature. You know, it's in some way the process of excavation and the process of building was not completely separated by the process of being in the nature. There was that idea. That's why I put it, this image, and there are others. The presence of nature and the presence of architecture are kind of merged together. It's a kind of marriage. Yeah.
那个就是现在看到是一个在罗马文化前大概8到10世纪时候的遗迹。那刚Saggio教授所提到，就是说过去自然跟人造物，在30-40年前那时候的建筑界，我们现在现在30-40年前，大概自然跟人造那时候分野非常清楚。但现在因为资讯科技的发达，我们现在好像讲的自然是并在一起在谈的，讲自然、讲环境、讲生态，讲什么谈在一起了。那现在呢，就是Saggio教授带我们从过去很早的历史开始来看，从最早这个Tuscan。
Yes, it's in Tuscan. Yes, in Lazio region. Yeah.
那在意大利早期的这个建筑遗迹，大家看得到，就是那时候当然你不容易去，他们已经在那个自然环境下的人造构筑的东西，事实上是混在一起，你不大容易去特别去区分那个是人造，那个是纯自然，实际上它是被一个所谓混合的，hybrid 就是混合的一个这样的环境。
Okay, so that process already was present at that time, and then that attitude in some way was carried on during medieval time, and particularly in several historical old part of many hill towns in Italy. You have that sensation that really the world of the construction and the world of environment are in some way merged together. They belong to some type of marriage. So here what makes the image is as much as the architecture, as much as the environment of the greenery and the nature. There is that process of hybridization. So this as a long story. You see, there is a big difference between this kind of idea and what we see here and what we see after. In the history of art and history of architecture, the beginning of Renaissance in 15th century in some way signed and marked the beginning of an attitude of creating a world that is all controlled by man, and it was all controlled by the rules of geometry and was all controlled by perspective. So that idea of a world, of an environment controlled by men through geometry and through perspective really brought out all the environment and all greenery and nature, because it was needed to build a really artificial, controlled architecture. So in one moment of history that particularly is the Renaissance, is not a moment of hybridization, is not a moment of merging, is the moment in which architectural rules was per se and was completely separated from nature. It's important that I understand this difference. Yes. I think this could be translated, I think, for them.
从刚刚前面那一张图，就是在意大利一般的山城，大概从中世纪以来，他们的一般建筑风格，其实你们大概看得到，就是房子跟建筑绿化，还有一些绿化的植物，它是属于共生的，环境。所以你所看到那个环境，其实绿的东西、自然的东西跟人造的东西，它所占的这些比例其实是非常的平衡、非常均等的。那但是从文艺复兴时期开始，文艺复兴时期这时候呢，开始会有一种新的做法，就是他们试着呢用是从人的观点来做建筑设计。所以那个时候呢，开始第一个人的观点主观性从数学的纯几何的，然后纯粹从立面立体这种观点的来去看这个建筑物跟这个空间。所以这时候他们的做法呢，基本上是把建筑这个东西硬生生的把跟自然这个东西给拆离掉了。
Okay. So, why I'm telling this? Because you have to understand that because of many reasons, things change in architecture, in the arts, in the social life, etc. Things change. They are not always the same, and our attitude change. So this moment of perspective, of the beginning of Renaissance and all that, was really the moment in which nature was out, was not part of architecture, was not interested so much. I mean, it was really mainly a construction of an artificial situation. We could discuss about this for a long time. After more or less 1 century after, 1 century and a half after that, in the middle of the 16th century, it starts another attitude that is called by historians of arts the late Renaissance, or the Mannerism. And this moment, basically all the rules of perspective, all the rules of that artificial world started to be scratched, started to be deformed. started to be put it in tension. The rules were already still there. They are not breaking the rules, but they are kind of force them in all different directions, because already was 150 years that the rules were there, so you start to move things around, you know, to make almost a caricature of those rules. And within the same feeling, nature and the environment that was kept separate before came back into the scene of architecture strongly and start to be merged again with architecture. And so these are examples of gardens and mansions planned together in that moment. We are talking about the 16th century, so more or less 500 years ago, more or less. Yeah, more or less 500 years. 450. That shows exactly that attitude. Again, we start to see these two things coming together. We saw it merged. We saw it merged at the ancient time. Yeah, we saw the persistence of that merging in spontaneous architecture. Then we saw, you know, when architecture took control as an artificial thing, moving out, all nature, and then we saw this process, you know, coming together. You know, so the two things are coming back and forth together. It depends in different moments of history. Okay. So this is this type of things where different attitudes of the garden design, architecture design, fountain design, etc., and architecture, they only belong to a kind of common game.
在文艺复兴大概15世纪，大概过了100年，大概16世纪中那个时候呢，慢慢的过去在文艺复兴那时候所架构的那些规则，所谓的数学规则，那些很硬生生所谓人为的这些立体啊，这种透视这种的规则呢，慢慢的有点改变，而这改变并不是被打破，而是说它慢慢的跟一些东西开始人家去怎么去改变它，去跟一些东西去混合。那慢慢的像在这个时期的房子就会看到说有一些东西自然东西就回来了，所以像在这一种别墅的设计里面，你会看到在庭园的设计里面，自然绿的跟人造的都又再一次的放在一起了。而这整个在历史的脉络当中呢，这种分合分合是很常见的。
Okay. Why this merging of architecture, nature, and brings another very important element of the game. And the other very important element of the game, it is the space among things. Okay, this little building, done more or less at the same time, it is a construction in the Vatican Gardens in Rome, and it is a kind of a prototype in some way, is the original idea behind the Baroque city that happened after. This one is like a gene, like the first piece of DNA that originated the idea of the Baroque city and the Baroque way of thinking of space. Because what is the issue? The issue is that you have three elements, and the three elements interplay one with the other. One element is the architecture, right? The second element is natural elements, and the two things are not separated, but they are merged. But the third element is the space, is the open space among the two. So open space, architecture, and nature, they belong to a game that is a common game. And that is the key thing to understand what's going on in the idea of space, idea of city, related to what is called the Baroque city, and Rome is the major example of that. Why everybody is so much interested in experience spaces in Rome? Exactly because even if he doesn't know, he has the sense, he feels that there is that combination. And the combination is the combination between nature, which in Rome is very present, architecture, and open space. And the three things interact one with the other. And so this is this little construction in the Vatican Garden. Here you get all the information. You can read later on if you are interested to know what is exactly, etc. Is really the interplay of these three things. And as I said, is a gene, the beginning idea of what happened in a large scale in Rome, in many situations in Rome, as Baroque city.
从刚刚那个梵蒂冈花园里面那个小小的角落，大家看到那里，那个景呢，事实上你会发现是具备了所谓巴洛克式建筑的最原始的形态。那大家说罗马城市呢里面的一些这些建筑风格，会说是巴洛克时代的最早期的一个代表。其实原因就在这边，就是它刚刚你们所看到的所谓建筑元素，还有环境的这个自然元素，还加上这个中间的所谓中介空间、开放空间的30个元素，三者互相互动，或是三者之间关系，这个整个都照顾到。那这就是说典型的在巴洛克建筑里面都会做到的。所以现在很多人到罗马去，你说要去体验那个所谓罗马式的这种空间，事实上最重要的元素就是这些事情。
Okay. Now we can do a jump and to see how certain ideas that I just expressed so far can be used in, for example, a design thesis of one of my students in Rome. Because what I was telling you at the beginning is that this way of presenting the material is not intended to be for a general audience. It is intended to orient design actions. So the real interest of this kind of thinking is really to understand that, to have clue to create design actions, because we are basically architects, or artists, but basically architects. So the goal is not so much knowing these things per se, but use them within a certain process of thinking. So, for example, this case, it is a design thesis already done several years ago. The graduation thesis in Rome is a kind of large work. It can take between 6 months and 1 year. So it's kind of a large work. We are going to see more than one. In this case, what's happening here, just show it very, very quickly, it shows a way to interpret with contemporary tools the Baroque city, and what you actually can do as a design action within the Baroque city. These are more similar to a critical model. They are not actual model. They are critical model, are a way to interpret a certain aspect of the urban environment, and are shown different aspects and different potentialities, but with a kind of slow process coming from that understanding to the critical model to certain design action can take place. Okay, So for example, in this case, through that process, there was possible to find underground spot in the city of Rome already existing that can be put it in a kind of new system, because of course in downtown Rome you cannot do it many actions. You cannot build skyscrapers, for example, because all the historical things will be interesting, will be kept. So it's important to understand how you can do certain actions. So that was one part. All this kind of idea of interpreting the city through linen and through texture and with this type of material brought the idea to make several actions in the city, both in terms of architecture or in terms of, let's say, some kind of landscape design done in this way. That is in one way that start to evocate, the presence of the past, that hybridation, and some feeling of contemporary time. Okay, so all this is a kind of slow process of understanding certain issues, and to have to emerge a possible way of actions. Okay, and in this case, to a very conceptual level. Later, we will see real projects. But for now, just to understand what is the attitude.
刚各位看到这个是他们一个项目在毕业前的半年或1年会做的一个设计专题，一个专题的一个设计。欧美就讲叫一个 thesis， 有点像论文，但它不是论文。所以像这他学生做的这个呢，事实上是利用很现代的一种手法，但是去探究的是历史的一些事情。可能是把历史的东西用现代的一些表现手法，或者把现在的议题呢，就重新去思考二者的关系。所以刚刚各位看到它那个模型，它不是精确的，也不是按比例的，都不是这类模型，而是一个很概念式的，是拿来作为讨论，拿来作为重新诠释的那种模型。那模型是利用像一般的布啊、拼布啊，上面画一些图案以后，然后去缝来缝去，弄来弄去。然后把一些东西做皱褶，拉来拉去，弄来弄去的。所以你看到它是用某种的手法操作去揣摩那个城市看的那个感觉，而不是实际它的样貌。好，那所以你在这底下看到很多是比较概念式的一些呈现方式，但是在后面等一下应该会有一个更具体的一个结果呈现出来。
Okay. All right, now let's make another step. Okay, this is just a key image about the hybridation between nature and architecture and natural elements. Here comes the book series as a help, okay, that can be helpful to discuss these issues. As you know, the book series is where did he go? Where is the link? Okay. So the book series originated in Italian in 97, okay, with these first books. And then out of that we've done 30 and so books in Italian. Okay, these are the last ones. And then it has, many of you or some of you will know the English edition about the book series. This is the last one, and from this link you can basically see them. And the book series, of course, covers different topics in relationship between architecture and information technology. The whole idea of the book series is the idea that information technology is an instrument. So it's really a way to materialize a new type of ideas. And there is a strong relationship between that instrument, information technology, all the tools that are related to it, and the type of thinking of architecture that we can do. And the other big idea is that there is a revolution, because this new instrument is so important, it has such a large impact, it's really a big change in paradigm in some way. One thing was the paradigm of the industrialization, and another paradigm is completely that one of information technology. And the thinking behind is really that we are in the third wave, like Alvin Toffler said it several years ago. So we are really in the moment, in the historical moment of information technology. So many things will change, and architecture also among that. And the other key aspect of the book series is that was intended to address architecture as a complex intellectual discipline, and the relationship between architecture and information technology was done at a high level of issues and complex issues. So it's not, that was not intended as a manual kind of, or something that you can, immediately instruct, but it was something like, an intellectual adventure. All these things seems natural once they've been done, but at the time where the book series was thought, they were not there. That's why the book series got from Italy, went to English, and from English went to Chinese. And in Chinese has been published 9 books. These are the others. 9 books has been published, and many others will come along, because we basically had this is new. We just met, thanks to Professor Cheng Cheng and the publisher of the Chinese series, and it's very probable that it will continue and enlarge this. So we will have these new books coming out. So all this to tell you that there are 30 books, so there are many topics. But I will pinpoint only 3 books that in some way will address this issue of the combination, the hybridation of, let's say, nature, generally speaking, and architecture. It's a complex issue, because said like that is very simple, but in reality it's complex and is rich of a lot of potential. It's a rich of potential of thinking, and it is one of the mainstream, it's not the only one, but one of the mainstream of thinking new type of architecture because of information technology, or in relationship with information technology. It's not the only one, but is one. Okay. So the 3 books that I can mention, it is this one, that in English is called New Homes, and this book covers a very interesting topic, that is the hybridation between the concept of the body and the concept of architecture. Again, body and architecture has been merged, be separated and merged again during different phases of the history. In this particular moment, because of information technology, there are all new kinds of, of getting together. The idea of the hybridation of the body and the relationship with architecture is a very interesting field, and so this book will cover that. Then this other book by Alicia Imperiale is called New Flatness in English, and basically discuss one idea that at the beginning doesn't seem to be so relevant for our issue, that is the idea of the surface. Why surface became so important today within a discussion of information technology. Why flatness became an issue. And this is a very interesting topic and full of consequences in art, in architecture, and so on and so forth. And the book explains this. Just to tell you one thing. It is so important because screens are very important. We used to, more and more, to deal with flatness through screens. And within that, we got many issues that are related to surface. But surface are not the same that they used to be. They have some level of complexity, some level of depth that at the beginning we don't understand, but in the process we understand. So the issues of flatness and depth becomes very interesting. And all that is also very much combined with the idea of new relationship with nature, new relationship with environment. Just to tell you one thing that everybody knows, how many new architecture has that kind of serigraphied surface which plays with light and nature in different ways. So you understand that something is going around there. So flatness, deepness, nature belongs to something that is up and there. And then there is the third one that is called newscape, that is addressed very much the issue of architecture, nature, and complexity. Why complexity? Because more and more architecture tends to use in its forming certain concept that comes from the natural worlds. Architecture tends to simulate certain level of complexity happening in the natural world, in the natural environment, and kind of captures those rules and use them as a new force of making itself. So there is a new idea of complexity that is related. So I summarize in 2 minutes each 3 books that deals with 3 different topics. And so I understand that it's a little complex to follow, but this just to tell you that if you want to go deeper on these issues, you can go deeper through these books, through the images, and you have an understanding of how these things are implied. And you can not really follow exactly what I said, except if you know it already. But you know that you can get this kind of information from these books. If you can, you know, in some way.
这一系列是我刚刚在最早一开始之前讲过，就是Saggio教授其实他的理想是就是在意大利能发行这一系列很多很多的书。那意大利文版现在已经30本左右了，那英文版的也还没那么多。How many books
are 32? In English, I think there are 25, and now in Italian there are 37, 32. In Italy, yep.
32本，英文大概27本，那中文现在才出9本。那事实上，刚刚的那个淡江大学陈真诚老师也来过，跟这个中文书的这个出版社，那事实上应该未来会继续再出这一系列的书。那刚刚Saggio教授建议大家，就是说以刚刚我们今天这个演讲的主题呢，这3本书可以鼓励大家来看的。如果说你想要对这一个主题要再继续深入去看的话，那我们今天这个主题主要是人造的、人工的这种人造物跟自然的这个混合。那像第一本书《新居住体》，但是有中文版，大家直接看也很快啊。这有新居住体呢，这谈的是说把人好像也是一种自然物，人这个东西跟建筑物过去历史上也经常分分合合这个关系，有时候是放在一起看的，有时候是分开来看，完全不顾到人的这个关系的。 那现在因为数位科技资讯科技的关系，现在人跟建筑物的关系实际上变得更密不可分了。好像有所谓电子化人跟这个身体跟房子之间的关系。第二本书《建筑新表面》呢，这谈的是皮层的这个事情。那皮层的话呢，我们现在知道皮层不像过去一样的建筑，过去的建筑物皮层没有像现在我们可以谈那么多深入的话题，那么多的议题可以去讲它。那现在呢，这个皮层它并不是我们光从外面看它就那一层表面那一层而已。那我们现在谈的话，除了它，比如说材料啦、使用的各种的一些问题啦、讨论透明度啦这些东西，跟环境啊、反射啦这些事情，事实上有更多更深入的议题可以去谈它的。所以中间这本书呢所谈的就是从这个表面来看看，表面除了平坦的这种摸得到的这种面之外，还有什么更深入的议题可以去看它的。那第三本书这个是还没有变中文版了。那现在这个谈的是所谓复杂的这件事情。那我们现在从很多的设计，大家都很喜欢从自然界去取材，去把自然界里面复杂的这些东西拿来用在我们的设计，用在现在的这个建筑的规划里面。啊，这边讲的就是那个复杂的这件事情，在我们现在的设计越来越多了。我并不是讲说那个很困难的那种复杂，而自然界的那个复杂所带进来。
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. So now let's move okay, by the way, that's the link. Okay, now let's start to approach more or less what is the situation today about this issue of relationship between environment, nature, and architecture. Where are we now, more or less? What you see on the left, it is a painting by Paul Klee, is the name of the painter. And you can see that painting as a program, as a piece of DNA, as a gene of a new thinking of architecture, the beginning of a new thinking of architecture. Klee was not interested, I mean, he was not an architect, he didn't do it necessarily in terms of thinking, in terms of architecture, but that painting in some way wrote a program for a different type of thinking of architecture. This is very important to understand because often ideas that are coming from philosophy or painting or other fields can influence very much the way that architecture is conceived and then is done. But you know, there is a stronger relationship that you imagine, particularly when you have to face new ideas. What is before this? Well, before this, there is the clear idea. It was the opposite idea. Let's say if these things work, and let's just go in Google, okay? Let's find something in real time. So what is different from this? What is the opposite for this? Okay, let's go here. Let's put, for example, okay, let's see if it works. It will work. Of an architecture as a Platonic solid. And this Platonic solid, Platonic means belonging to the sphere of the intellectual ideas, separated by the real world. Platonic solid, like the cube, you know, or the cylinder, you know, those perfect forms. Those forms were sitting on a flat surface, completely separated in reality. So one thing was the field, and the other thing was the object sitting in the field. Everything was really built by that separation between object and field. The two things were separated. All the beginning of the modernity of architecture was in some way based on that idea. Pure solids sitting on the field and creating tensions among these different solids. All that idea also had another sub-idea related to that. That was, in some way, this world will simulate the mechanical, industrial world. Because a machine, if you imagine a machine, the machine is completely separated by nature, right? The machine must work by itself, as its own beauty, its own functioning, completely separated. So that idea of Platonic solids sitting on a surface, it is the prototype of one idea. While what we saw it here is just the opposite. Is just the opposite. There is not a separation between surface and solid, but the two things belong to the same environment. In terms of speaking kind of jargon of architects, he said that there is no separation between figure and soil. Basically, figure and soil belongs to the same system. They are generating in the same way. Landscape and architecture are put it together in a kind of a network system that is the same conceptually. So there is not that separation that we saw before. So this one, if we interpret this painting as a map or a diagram or something that we can use to generate architecture and landscape, what we do? Well, it's simple. Certain part become construction, some other part become land design, some other part becomes diagrams, becomes path. So this is kind of something that keeps everything together. It's not so important if this part, it is actually three-dimensional built, and this part is just a grass. It doesn't really matter if this is a water design and these are construction there. It doesn't really matter if this becomes a path and these other are, I don't know, excavated down, construction or greenery or whatever. It doesn't matter. Belong to the same structure. You understand the difference? It's a big, big difference. It's a profound difference. Okay, so this approach that doesn't separate figure from ground, we see it immediately there. Yeah, this is a Zadid famous drawing, but at the same time, this is the project of the fireworks building in Switzerland, right? And so basically, here we see the same thing, that the architectural form and the landscape belong to the same rule. There is not that separation of figure and ground anymore.
那个这是克利，知道吗？保罗设立的画，右边那个是拉哈哈做的。然后你看到那个可布的那个房子，那刚刚Saggio教授讲到那个 Platonic， 但是柏拉图是理想的，是理想的某种理想的几何形。所以像可布的那个房子，基本上它就是其实所谓的现代建筑很多都是用所谓理想的概念上一个非常漂亮理想的一些几何形去拼凑出那个房子，把它放在一个地平面上面。所以基本上它是一个非常服务的，就是我只考虑到平面，考虑到把一些理想的几何形拼凑在一起，放在那个上面。所以这个回到这个所谓土地的这个关系 ，figure ground 的这个关系的话，土地的这个关系的话，就是说在那个时代的土跟地是非常非常清楚的去分野出来，这个是一个漂亮的这种几何形。那哪些是地？这些分得很清楚。 但是现在呢，如果回到保罗·克利所的那张图的话，我们把它视为是现在一种所谓混合 hybridation 的这种混合的这种形式来看的话，是一种图地混合的这种观点。那图地混合的观点就是说，图跟地的这些线条所切割开来的每一个东西，其实它都可以是图，也可以是地，它可以是被拉高，可以是被推下去，可以是河流，可以是房子，可以是人造，可以是自然。所以每一个地方，它其实整体来说是所有东西都混合在一起的。所以从哈迪的这张这个设计图里面可以看得到，在很多思维上面也是把这个人造物跟自然或图跟地的这种关系做混合式的这种思考，而不是把它刻意的去拆分开来去看。
Okay. So now you relax. Okay, 30 seconds. So let's continue. Let's continue. So in the meantime, I found another image that in some way showed, again in painting, the same approach. But let's be focused on this. So this is kind of important action, instrument, thinking, process at the same time, and brings all that idea that you can start creating grids, create texture, create ordering lines in some way, ordering patterns in some way, and those that don't belong only to construction. They belong to construction, to environment, to relationship, etc., in making the whole thing together again. And there is not that fundamental difference anymore between what is built and what is not built, because they belong to the same setting of rules. So this is very important to understand. So this will bring the relevance of also of information technology back into the scene. Why? For many reasons. For many reasons. At least for a couple or three reasons. Let's see why information technology comes back into the scene. First of all, because the whole idea of separation between the building artifact and nature has as a background the idea that the human beings, through their technologies, through their power, through their capabilities, they can dominate and exploit nature. The whole idea behind this and behind the mechanical approach was really the idea that I wanted to show you the next image that I selected. We'll go in a second. The whole idea really that was that idea of domination of nature through technology, and architecture was part of that. That model, that mental model, particularly in Europe and particularly in America, less in Asia, because Asia was a little behind and need to still industrialize in some way, went in a process of crisis already around the 70s, beginning of 70s, because it was clear that if we dominate and we exploit 100% nature, we cannot survive for a long time, because we are destroying, the air, we are destroying the climate. We cannot have that attitude of domination of nature. We must come into some kind of agreement. And the key of that agreement is intelligence, and is technology, and is the interesting use of intelligence and technology. Why? It's simple. First of all, imagine that 30 years ago, to produce a certain level of good, you had to pollute, consume a certain amount of materials. Everything was big. Just imagine a computer, okay? Just imagine a computer to make the thing simpler. Okay, this didn't come, but doesn't matter. I will correct later. Imagine just the computer themselves, okay? Just after the Second World War, a computer need to be housed in a complete building. A computer powerful as this one, instead of being contained here, was contained in a complete building. What does that mean? That we need to exploit resources, for a complete building. Today, in 50 years, we can miniaturize those things, and that means that technology helps very much as intelligence in the process of using resources in a much more logical way. So that is the first level. The second level, why information technology goes into the scene, it is, as I said, the fact that doing this in some way is much more complex conceptually than putting a platonic solid on a field. In some way, the process of the liaison and the conceptual implication are much more complex. One thing is to put Ville Savoye sitting there and imagine that perfect square sitting there. Another thing is to start to think in terms of liaison, okay? And in order to think of the liaison, you must have system of simulation, basically that is the key word, is simulation, system of simulation in which information technology becomes very, 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 very important. Because once we get these new instruments, we really want to start understanding how certain process of creation of complexity, this is very simple, but we can go on and on, okay? How certain process of simulating certain processes can be used into the making of architecture. And because of that, information technology becomes very important. Now we've seen more and more, for example, building architectural cities that are built around complex simulation that are based on gravity or based on clouds formation or based on bird movement and things like that, very complex. So those things that belong to the natural world will arrive to kind of push new generation of architecture through information technology, because if you don't have the information technology, you cannot do it. So at least there are two things. One is, let's say, social, political, let's say, and the other one is really has to do with the information technology as a tool of simulation. Okay, we don't translate this, right? No. Yeah, just these 2 points. They are very simple.
我们这时候开始把那个资讯科技拿回来，那有2个最主要的原因。第一个原因呢是从过去历史上的观点来看，当人类掌握一种新的能力或一种新的革新的时候，通常人会开始产生一种自大，会想要去战胜大自然。所以从15世纪的这个文艺复兴时期开始，你看我们刚刚的例子，15世纪。我们文艺复兴上，人类掌握一种新的能力了，所以我们去尝试做任何一个会把自然排除的这种设计。然后到了工业革命的时候呢，你看到像国父的这种概念，就是说我们掌握工业设计的工业时代的这些革命的能力了，这时候我们要用人类力量来克服大自然，所以我们做了一个纯理性的一些东西在上面，在大自然的平面上面。那这时候我们面临第3次革命，第3次革命就是资讯科技革命。这个时候呢，我们人类会更小心了，因为我们所能造成的一些对大自然的灾害更为严重。所以这时候我们所需要思考的是，我们如何聪明的去使用，或聪明的去解决一些问题，而是在我们利用我们的智慧，利用资讯科技 怎么去在未来这个世界去处理得更好。那第二个呢，第二个原因呢是，当我们把我们想要把大自然这种复杂度带到当今的这些设计里面的时候，我们所面临的问题就是说，就是更多了。很多时候，我们必须想知道说，把复杂度带进来之后，它会变成一个什么样子。所以这时候我们需要模拟，就 simulation 模拟的这个技术。那没有资讯科技，我们做不到模拟。模拟的东西当然不仅只说我们现在所说的动画这类的模拟，它包含了各类各式各样的模拟，包含气候啊、各社会啊、各种鸟类迁徙啊、各种点日照啊，各类非常非常专业方面的这些模拟。而这些模拟呢，没有资讯科技是做不到的。好。
Okay, good, very well. Thank you. Okay, now let's say that okay, here is the painting that I wanted to use, to tell you. So this is kind of the program of this. This is a Leger painting. You see that difference between ground and figure, and you feel all that industrial machine thinking. So I took less than 30 seconds to find it. Probably a better one could be found, but just to give an idea, okay? And the important thing is not that, it's the message. It's the subliminal message. Okay. Now, that means that, you can, as far as you have ideas today with today's tools, you can really react real time. You can really interact real time, okay? So now I wanted to show some projects that have been done either from my students or by a group of researchers that are together with me in a group that is called Nitro Saggio. Okay. Now Nitro Saggio is not exactly a professional office. It's a really a research group that is created by, some of them are my assistants at the university, some others are my old students. They are young architects in their 30s, 35. They do different things. Among others, they belong to this group of research that is called Nitro Saggio Net. So they do competition, books, magazine, and so on and so forth. So some work is done by this group, Nitro Saggio, and then we'll see some. Some others are graduation thesis of my students. And so it's the same philosophy that moves these different activities, okay? So I'll show you some of this just to tell you how that idea of the new hybridization between nature and architecture and information technology comes together. Okay, this case is called Urban IRI. It's a competition that has been done in London 1 year ago. It shows basically a possibility to create in the urban context. You see some application, something that you don't really know if it is an architecture, is a piece of furniture, is a landscape, what it is exactly. Is an hybrid. That's why there is this title of the situation. This can be reconfigured in very different situations in the city, and at the same time, what is very important, this act also through technology in changing outside factors and possibly manipulate it through technology. So, for example, the noise on the outside can be rechanged in sound because these are emitting sound. Or the artificial light can be changed in some level of natural light through the use of certain technology back and forth and so on. The pollution of the environment can be changed in fragrance. All this is basically done with the systems that are shown up there. There are basically materials, technology, and more technology and materials are coming out that allows the transformation from one element to the other. Just imagine what is happening in, probably will happen in 5 years or 6 years. We will have a lot of these things through nanotechnologies, basically. Because nanotechnology will bring to the material a level of intelligence that is incredible. So we should start to be prepared on that idea that there is a new level of hybridization between, in the way that we think, in the way that we design, and in the way that we do it. And all this can be done, and then we'll discuss later on to address crisis. Now, this will probably take a few seconds, but we can relax a little bit while seeing this movie. I hope it will. It goes through internet, so we'll take, okay, a little time, but it's fine. These are, that just puts you, these are basically some of the works of this group, Nitro Saggio. And in this group, I don't act as a master designer. I act as a professor, basically, in the same way that I act in the teaching. So I'm not directly involved in first person. I mean, I am the philosophy behind, but they do it, the work. And this, I think, are nice, the animation, because gives you in the right feeling, So these are different competitions, and several of them are really dealing with that issue of hybridization between nature and architecture. And then I think it is nice, and everything it is in the website. So just following the links, you will have access to all these materials. And at the same time, you relax. This was a garden of lovers, it's called. And it is a competition, and was asked really for the garden of lovers. And then basically I found these two images that I think were very inspiring. That one that I found it incredible, the first one, and the second one there was a sculpture that I was seeing in Athens. So they started to create a landscape out of those two images. And this is Garden of the Lovers, so all the different parts follow a certain process of relationship, emotion, different type of things. And so in the different part of the garden, you have different technologies also, not only different materials, but also different garden materials, different flowers, but also different technologies. So here is being expressed very simple, but like an overview. And this is a cemetery, a new idea of the cemetery design. Again, it is the landscape, it is formed with that approach, you see. And the interesting thing it is that basically the graves are put within this system, and the whole thing becomes a kind of a landscape where graves are, and then also there are some level of technologies with those elements that I don't know if you see it here, you saw before, that in some way can signal. I don't think that they are here anymore. Anyway, so all of these got prizes around on one level or the other. So they are all competitions that got some type of prizes. Okay, I don't know if I have many others. But the music is relaxing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it puts you in a kind of, all right. This was more a city planning project. These are the different elements of the construction and so on. I think there is something else. I don't think there is something else. This is the last one. Okay. Okay. Now we can see some work. The works are here that we just discussed. For example, this one is the cemetery, and within here there is all the system of graves, and then there is this element here that is like I don't know how to say in English. Makoto say sometimes use this, you know, like they are like a piece of greenery, basically, that are moving, like bamboo cans, basically. Yes, like fiber, yes. The 10, in this particular case, through use of technology or lights and sensors, etc., will signify where the dead person is, a kind of a signal of the dead person, became a signal of the dead person. So that's the idea. You see at the end how these things that seems quite simple is not that simple, because basically there is a new idea of cemetery, and the cemetery was an action of landscape at the same time as a way of taking care of the graves. Okay, within this is shown, and yes, and at the same time there are all these elements that are put in the landscape that signed this, and this was done for a competition in England. And now in England, that idea of landscape and cemetery, it is already a little merged. In other cultures, it's more separated, but in England makes some sense. So this is an evolution of that idea. And it's typical about that idea of hybridization of architecture, nature, and technology. So if you want to say a few things about this. 跟居家不会分得那么清楚，在东方我们是分得很清楚，对吧？所以像这个计划，基本上他们是把它也是把墓园的这种事情弄得比较，也是跟他们的这个居住环境，就当时像公园一样在规划，然后把你刚从那些整个 movie 其实也不用太多解释，你看得很清楚，他做的那个考虑是自然跟人造各种这类就是都做在一起。刚刚说像这个旁边这个呢，其实就代表一个人。往生的那个人，就像一个纤维一样的一种照明，某种东西在那个地方摇曳，在那里晃这样子。Okay. Now, the group, Saggio also build prototypes, okay, and have to do some experiment. You have to understand that the group is like a little studio. It's not, you know, funded or anything like that. It's basically like their experiment, basically, that is done. And but particularly my area of specialties is very much that one of publication, not that much of getting sponsors. So I'm not particularly good on that. Although could be possible, but I'm not the right person to do that. But we do prototyping, though. So I'll show you two things. One was this one. That is kind of interesting. Well, we have a place in Sicily. The group has a place in Sicily where we have workshop and seminars or period of study, like kind of a retreat. And when we go there, we do different type of stuff. One thing was interested to work manually with these elements that are the same material that you do basket out of it, okay? But the idea was to bring an hybridization of this very old and typical material with new technology. And so the new technology were fiber, light fiber, electrical fiber, right? I don't remember how you call it in Yes, fiber, yes. And at the same time was also possible to put some level of water and humidification of this kind of hybrid. It becomes a plant, is a basket, is a light, a night lamp, what it is, you know, and particularly what do you do with this type of stuff. So we build all this, and then we start figuring out different ways and different situations in which you can use that. For example, on the beach or in other situation, and you start imagining uses about this thing, and you start to simulate that. This to tell you that we do build stuff. And then, okay, and then I'll show you another thing that is, I don't know how to go. Okay, no. Now, let's see a full project that deals with these issues, and then we'll see another simulation that is more advanced, okay? With the last simulation, we finished. So more or less in 10 to 12 minutes, we will be finished, okay? So just be with me for other 10 minutes or so. So this, I wanted to show you this project because this is one kind of large final design project that we do in Rome, so you have a sensation of what the students do. Here I selected only a few boards, but if you want, you can see the whole project completed here. And we see the board in higher resolution too. Okay, we'll mount in a second. Yeah, it will take some time, but basically not that much. Now, what's going on here is the following. And this will have something, the alert, similar in attitude of what we are doing in the workshop. The person that graduates has to find a situation of crisis, of difficulty, either in the city or around it. Because I really think that if at the very beginning of a design action, if it is found a situation that is difficult, that is a real crisis, that is a real problem, and then you apply your intelligence, your enthusiasm, your strengths, your intellect to a difficult situation, everything will become much more interesting, and you will discover things in the process. So the beginning act, that it is in some way very important to tackle a problem that has the potential to be interesting and rich of potentialities. If I do a house using information technology for a rich person, I can do it all sorts of interesting games in it, which is fine. If I will address some issues of difficulties instead, that at the beginning seem, oh my God, how do I do it? But then I will start thinking and applying information technology, I will discover something very interesting. If I deal with problem of, for example, as we are going to discuss, of people that they don't have all their faculties, or they have some type of sickness, for example, or there are urban situations where there are real problems, or either pollution, or traffic, or danger, or things like that. At the beginning, I say, oh my God, how difficult it is. But if I have the courage to engage with that kind of reasoning, and in the process, I will discover a lot of things, and I will get a lot of strengths. So it's very risky at the beginning. It seems to be risky, and it's very critical at the beginning. But once you get into that thing, you got a lot of speed and interest and enthusiasm in making things. Anyway, in this particular case, after study, this student found this situation here in Rome for the Olympic of the 1960s. This was a whole park, very large park in the city, and for the Olympic of the 60s was built a highway, basically cutting the park in two parts. So that was kind of a critical situation, something that was never really solved. And so he said, well, we'll focus on that situation, okay? We want to address that critical situation. So that was not given, arrived at a certain moment of thinking, because you have to find out that. Then after that, another important step was done. He's starting to studying the historical villa there, and he found that the very famous architect of the Baroque time that is called Borromini studied the villa and made several designs for the villa itself and for the family to which the large park, the large villa belonged, that were the Chigi, no, the Pamphili family. Why this is important? Everything is like a detective story. There are many steps. There are many steps that arrive to the project. And all steps are connected to one to the other, okay? So you must be patient to really understand what's going on. So from Borromini, the next step was, all right, Borromini was a Baroque architect and had what type of diagrams what he was using in order to make his architecture. So he started studying all the geometry and the diagrams that Borromini was doing. Here are summarized very, very simply. And not only that, also, other issues such as this they are quite interesting. Like you can create bridges and other forms, not with an additive process, but through membrane, like continuous membrane. And the two things in some way are interconnected, the diagrams and the membrane. So these are kind of background issues, and then these are starting to be applied to the actual site. Because the idea was this, to really kind of bend that fracture with a new membrane, okay, that was acting as a bridge, but not a bridge in a traditional sense, like an hybrid. What is that? What animal is that? It is a bridge? Mm-hmm. It is an architecture? Mm-hmm. It is a piece of landscape? Mm-hmm. How implies technology? So all these things becomes an hybrid, becomes something that are all these things together in some way, that you can see it as a bridge, but in reality it's not a bridge. You can see it as a building, in reality it's not a building. It's all these things together in a different attitude. And at the same time, in order to design that, you have to apply all that intelligence that is basically is related to information technology, because there are ways to create this diagram, to simulate, to do all this, you know, these things, okay? But in this case, all these things comes to reinforce, let's say, the first situation. You really need to do certain things in this situation. And the other aspect is program is essential for us. And the program of this building, it is a new museum of Baroque architecture in Rome that actually is missing. It makes a lot of sense to have a museum of Baroque architecture in Rome in this particular location. And of course, as everybody knows, today, when you mention museum, but in reality, everything becomes mixed in use, right? There is what you call the museum part, but there is commercial, there is restaurant, there is work, there is leisure, and all these buildings are mixed buildings. There is a kind of driving force that we may call the museum, but then there are all the mixture of activity that coexist, okay? So this is in terms of the program. So let's move on and see how the thing is. Let's see. Okay, here we can kind of start seeing this animal here, and then you see the section and how the thing works, both in terms of technology. Because what is important here, okay, and then you see real plans, because at the end we must do real buildable architecture. So these things must work in terms of, you know, of construction, in terms of spaces. So this lends to real buildable architecture. We scroll back and forth because I wanted to keep a high, you know, level of, it's possible really to read the drawing and print the drawing if you want, okay? So you see, all things that I do is always public. That is the idea. So you have access to this material, you can study, you can do whatever. And the important thing for me is to be, you know, to credit the student name and the school and myself, you know, because this material is done for cultural reasons. So it's important to be correct in that, but it's done for this reason. Another interesting aspect of this project is that the building, through technology, not only occupy the land and not only sits there or merge to the landscape, but also is an active force in the landscape, because with new type of materials and new elements, basically this building not only will not pollute, but will help in creating a clearer air, for example, because it can work as a filter for very different things. And this is particularly important because it is on this highway that cuts the park. So the building helps through different materials and technology to clean up the air, etc. So this is a really hybrid building. You know, it's a building, it's a piece of landscape, it's a bridge, it's a mixed use. So, and particularly address, let's say, a situation of crisis with new forces. And these new forces belong to a very wide spectrum of thinking, you know, that goes from the understanding of historical processes to, you know, many different things are coming together to a design action. Okay. And then I will finish with this. That is another case of hybrid situation, and this is at the same time the ending of this lecture and in some way the beginning of the next. This is a link, a conceptual link between the two. Because this installation that I'm going to discuss in a second, you can see it from one side, is the side that we are discussing today, about the hybridization between nature and architecture, but on the other side you will see as a changing of coordinate of space and time, and that is what we're going to talk about Saturday, okay? Now, what's the situation here? This is a friend of ours that is called Lorenzo Bruschi. Lorenzo Bruschi is a philosopher and a musician, and he's a composer of music. And like 6 or 7 years ago, he invented, together with another person that is called Passerotti, a garden in which music and music composition is merged to the garden. So one guy is basically an expert of botany, and he's a musician, a composer. The two together create an hybrid environment where music and, let's say, gardening, if you want to call it, they are together. So it's kind of called the sonor garden, giardino sonoro, okay, the sonor garden. And within that, they do all different type of different installations. So, for example, this is an installation. This is a kind of a digitized wall, but each of these bush has a speaker hidden, but the music is done specifically for this installation, and the music can also change through sensors because of the change in the environment, okay? Because of noise or because of light or things like that. So this is a kind of typical mixed environment. Now, within this, he asked to Nitro Saggio group to do an installation. So we did it. Now, what is the installation? The installation that was done last May, Tarducci and Ampolo were the main designer of this, and they carry all the work of this, but the whole group thought about this idea. This, what you see on the right, is an image that is very well known by the architect of, let's say, of Europe and Eastern, Western culture, because this is it's called the refundation of architecture at the Illuministic time, just before the French Revolution. After all those centuries of architecture, this image said, okay, we have to start from scratch again. We have to start from the basis. And the bases are in this primitive art. What you see in the right is the primitive art. Primitive art, just the basic, and then this, so about the ruin of this architecture, we start from scratch for the very basic rules of architecture. That was a typical idea of the Illuministic time, you know, to, you know, rational, new rational, starting over, beginning again. So these are kind of typical image, very well known. So what we wanted to do is what we call techno-primitive. We wanted to do a new art in the year 2007 that will imply certain of that idea, but because of information technology, changes completely. So it's primitive in a way, but the attitude changes completely. And then I'll show you what's going on in the animation. So this was the logo and the thing. And I'll show you what's going on in this movie. I think we'll see it from the web. In this version probably will take little time, but once it's in here, it's in here. Let's see.
内部这个研究的一个 group， 他们在做，他们在尝试这些新东西。像那个东西，你说它是什么？你说装饰是装饰，是照明是照明，好像什么都不是。他们现在尝试了很多这种混合的东西。那刚刚第二个那个高速公路上面，把一个公园切割开来，他们试着做了一下那个规划案的。那个最主要，我觉得Saggio想要讲是，也是这个主题是我们workshop的主题，就是所谓的 crisis。那 crisis 只能在一般中文翻译，我在这上面有特别写到，一般我们中文翻译是讲危机。那但是这个 crisis 这件事情，在我们这个 workshop 里面所讲的呢，它不见得非得是坏的事情。所谓的危机，它讲的说，在这个时代里面，对于整个社会、整个各种大的层面影响很大的一些事情，或一些问题，或一些趋势，我们都可以说它是一种 crisis， 或者一个很关键的某种的影响。所以像在一般的设计案里面呢，以 crisis 的角度出发的话，在从 Professor Saggio 的角度来看说，他们会从找到一个所谓的有关键性的议题来做挑战，来去做设计。那这时候呢，会面临非常多的挑战。那如果说呢，你的这个案子本身并没有太大的挑战，举例来说，假设你是一个有钱人，然后你去做房子，这基本上你怎么做都 OK， 基本上钱不会有问题，并不会有不用这些问题。所以这时候呢，通常呢，你也可以自找麻烦，就是你得去找一个什么是一个问题，譬如说你从技术上、从工具上、从媒材上，比如说你利用资讯科技里面做各式各样的分析跟模拟，那这时候媒材跟工具会是你的那个所谓关键性的那个东西。那最后的这个案子呢，也是一个
You want to see the image?
的一个案子。我们再看一下这个 video.
Yes. You want to see the video? Okay. So we'll see it locally, but you know it's the same that is in the web. Oh, what's that? No sound. Strange. Very strange. Well, we'll see here. The web works better. So the hut was built actually out of 3 trees that create a triangle, and then was actually created there in the garden, and then it was put in that kind of hamaca there, and then you see this guy, you don't understand exactly what's going on, and now you understand the interesting thing is that in this primitive art, while it's moving, basically the sounds moves and the sounds is manipulated. So the technology at the end is a pretty straightforward technology that are with a system of sensor, even with a very simple webcam, you can track movement. And then the movement basically are brought to the computer that change the music that has been recorded, changing the pitch, the sound, variate the soundtrack. So all that seems quite trivial, but it is really nice instead. It is really nice because there is that idea that you are in that kind of new art. Is still very primitive in a way, because it's really an art. So in some way, the fact to not having very important sponsor, and then basically this thing was built basically among the forces of the Nitro Group without a particular sponsor, so it was actually physically built. At the same time, I think it is a very interesting thing, and then what's happening, you'll see it in a second, you really are in the field that you are creating the environment. You are creating the environment, you can manipulate the environment. This is really a very nice sensation. And so this changes something. Something is not exactly the same. So this, to a certain extent, is like a re-beginning. So nature is there, light is there, the trees, whatever is that creates a primitive art is there, but with technology there is a new beginning, right? Something is really changed. We cannot communicate these things completely because this is just a video, but you may have the thing. The only things that you can, okay, so you can see these things all over and over, and let me see. Okay, and then here there is another movie that we can finish with that. Okay, in this case you just are going to see very quickly how many persons use it, because this was by far the most popular installation in this garden. And here just shows another implication, that is how many different people, I mean these are not all, but this is just to tell that the human factors becomes again central in this type of environment, you know. This type of environment, each human being reacts in different ways and acts into the environment in different ways. So becomes a subject again, okay? So all these are all different subjects that in some way use it, the space in different way with different attitude, and create it every time a new environment, because the new environment is himself in the art with the music acting in different ways. So this is a kind of, you may imagine this as a promo, okay, like an advertisement of what new type of architecture can be, to bring back the subject at the center. So this will be the end of this talk, and we will, I think we will resume, we will decide later when we resume with it. So thank you very much.
通过这两个机制案子是非常实验性的啊。刚刚你看前一个那个是跟一个园艺家，他是有哲学家，他也是作曲家，他是身兼各种身份。那他们在做各种很多声音实验，但是前一个就让你看到每一丛花，每一丛那个一丛那个其实都是一个 speaker， 就是喇叭，然后你可以跟他互动，可以有一种所谓的声音花园的那种感觉。那现在看的这个影片呢，他说。就是说试着做一些实验，然后试着把人跟自然跟空间跟你这种动的这种感觉，重新再带回一种很纯粹的某种感动。 就是你并不既然一定要一个实体的房子把你包起来，一定要设计的墙是什么东西，那才是说那种并不是说建筑的这种空间的关照，并不是只有那个，就是说他现在把这种很纯粹的这种技术再带回来做实验。那从刚刚看到的，经常用到很多新的这种 sensor 啊，这种感应器啊、互动啊、电脑什么，但其实看起来很像很技术性，但事实上那只是实现的手段。但它最终大家都可以感受得到，它其实要做的目的是很单纯，就是那件事情。我们再一次掌声，谢谢Professor Saggio。
Thank you.